This one is tricky to call because both charts show assets and liabilities. McCarthy is on a Saturn-Sun period, Saturn in the Sun sign, and this can be a period of reaching a pinnacle, particularly when you look at an elevated planet. Saturn is near the midheaven, transiting now. It's the ruler of that chart, along with Uranus. However, at the same time, Saturn over your Sun is not a particularly easy period to get through, and often will signify a giant no to your aspirations. It's one of those things that can go either way, but I'm suspicious that this particular transit could turn negative based on the fact that his Saturn at birth is making a really tight square to the moon. And a planet like that, let's just say that is fond of delivering bad news. To that, we add that Jupiter at the time of the vote, directly opposite Mars, isn't particularly great either. It would be much better if it were in other degrees and it wasn't directly challenging a planet like that. And Neptune is opposite the Mars-Pluto midpoint, so it's not positioned very well either. Both of these are in the zenith sign, and so that's important to consider. Then we see that Uranus, where it's placed, it's effectively in the middle of Taurus. That's where it's going to station, even though it's at around 18. I read this planet in a square to his MC. Now, on the one hand, you could say that could be good. If we look at the natal Uranus, Uranus trines Jupiter, trines Venus, Mercury, and you can apply a rule whereby you say a planet that is part of a grand trine like that comes along in a square and becomes a very positive stimulant. Yeah, that's true, except that I'm wondering if that's going to be the case, or will it be instead the shock of something unexpected? Because, as I'm sure you've heard, the consensus seems to be that the Republicans are likely to win this race based on polls, expectation, gerrymandering, etc. Putting the Uranus there and being triggered by the eclipse at the same time, because that's where the eclipse is happening, seems a little risky to me based on the fact that it's a bit contrary to the outcome, which is what Uranus loves to do, and that's where it's going to be at the time of the vote. I have to finish by saying that I think Kevin McCarthy is a total fraud, if not perhaps completely corrupt, based on the way he has behaved in relationship to the events of January 6th, the initial position that he took, where he was very congruently pointing to Trump's malfeasance, only to very quickly change his mind and go over and kiss his ring at Mar-a-Lago when he realized that the Trump voters are definitely behind them, and he felt that basically lying through his teeth would be the way to go. And when I put that together with the fact that he is essentially now on the doorstep of a Saturn return, very elevated, but in a square to the moon at birth, which is where it's going to be when it returns. And that to me feels pretty ominous. And I'll tell you what, I hope that it is, because my opinion of this man is very, very low. When we look at Pelosi, the Jupiter effectively in Aries, it isn't, as the vote is happening, it's in late Pisces. However, Jupiter has been in Aries since May, went over these planets forward and backward, and will return over these planets in January, February, March, whereupon it'll reach the Jupiter return, and eventually in the summer go over the Taurus planets. So this chart is pointing to 2023 and 2024 as really good years, with Jupiter doing the tour of most of our planets. That's definitely powerful positive energy. The problem is Saturn in the transit pattern, you can count Uranus too, but definitely Saturn. Saturn is squaring her moon at the time of the vote, and effectively squaring up here, you could say all of these planets, but certainly the Venus. So Saturn is quite active. However, I took a look at 2006 when she was victorious in winning the House back at the time, and back then Saturn was over here in Leo squaring the Venus-Mars. In other words, it was active in that direction and had not finished squaring the moon. So it was effectively doing the same thing, only on the other side at the time. And back then, Jupiter helped her by being in Sagittarius, which makes a trine to her Aries planets. So my reasoning this time around is to say, if it worked last time with Saturn creating that kind of pressure, why shouldn't it work on this side, creating pressure, particularly when Jupiter now is over her sun sign, Aries, where the Jupiter is. That I would say is even more positive. So, despite the fact that I recognize the conventional odds are against me on this one, and according to the polls and the pundits, this race should go to McCarthy and the Republicans, I'm going to stay with my initial prediction that it will go to Pelosi and the Democrats.